I had the opportunity to shoot beach volleyball for the very first time this summer, and it just happened to be at Canadian Nationals. I learned a lot about sports photography and building my portfolio through this experience, so if that's something you might be interested in, stick around because I think this video is for you. One of my biggest goals for 2025 was to add 2 new sports to my sports photography portfolio. Now, when looking for a new sport to shoot, there's a lot of ways to go about it. For me personally, I prefer to look at the national sports organizations for the sport that I'm interested in. They usually have a pretty comprehensive list of the different competitions that'll be happening throughout the year and where they'll be happening. You can also look at provincial organizations and things like that. Earlier this year, around May, when I was coming back from Salt Lake City in the World Cup that I had previously shot, if you haven't seen my last video, go check that out. I had been doing exactly this process. Found out that there was a beach volleyball competition was happening in downtown Toronto. Honestly, it was a really cool opportunity because I had never seen a sanctioned beach volleyball competition, let alone did I think that one would be happening basically in my backyard. In terms of gear and the things that I brought, if you're new to this channel, you might not know, I shoot everything on Sony equipment. Specifically, right now I'm shooting this video on my main camera, which is the Sony a7 IV, and I have my 20mm 1.8 lens on there, which is my widest lens. It's a beautiful prime lens. It's really light. I also have a Sony a7 III as a backup body, but really through this entire weekend, the 2 days that I was shooting, like most weekend shoots and sports shoots in general, the lens that really gets me through it, and my workhorse lens is my 70-200. I've never made a dedicated video about this lens, but I've mentioned it in just about every video I make because at the moment in my career, this is the lens that I use most often, and it can frequently get me through entire events just on its own. So the 20mm is a really nice alternative to have, give some wide angle perspective in case I want something a little wider. And I do have other lens options, but I have to say, I find myself gluing this to my body. Not this body, but my camera body, if that wasn't clear. So that's enough about gear. Let me set this to the side. So let's really dive into the nitty-gritty and how I actually approach this shoot. So the first day when I arrived, like any sport, my main goal is to get my lay of the land and figure out where I honestly should be positioning myself. That approach usually comes through a few things. It's doing laps around the venue, walking around, getting my bearings with my camera. I use that as an opportunity to set my white balance, to scope out some angles through the actual viewfinder and see what it looks like at different focal lengths. It's really important for sanctioned competitions that you stay out of the way of the athletes and frequently a live broadcast. So the most important thing when you're getting your lay of the land is to figure out where those broadcast cameras are going to be, where the athletes are going to be, and where it's actually okay to stand, sit, or shoot from. It's pretty easy to tell that because usually there will be some photographers or media people there who are more experienced in that sport. So definitely don't be afraid to ask them. Talk to people. They'll give you a really good gauge of where is okay and where is not okay to stand. That being said, I've created this beautiful diagram here of what was essentially what did they call it? They called it the championship court or the match court. What was it called? Spotlight court? I don't remember. There was a name for it. There was other games that were between high-level players that were nearby, which made it easy. So if I wanted to stand over here on this side, I could always shoot the courts over here and be able to get it. These 2 chairs are where the athletes would be sitting when they're resting, and this is the main court, as you can imagine. This stripe line here is to represent the referee because there would be a referee here as well as on the podium here. Now, this referee, I felt the need to add to this diagram because he was frequently blocking a lot of the shot and sight lines that I had. So yeah, beach volleyball is 2 people, one at the front and one at the back. When there is service happening, one is here, one is here. The pace of play for this sport is so incredibly quick that you need to be anticipating things that are going to happen before they do. Otherwise, you'll definitely miss shots. These thicker black lines are the barriers for the people to sit behind, like spectators. These squiggly lines are where spectators would be sitting. Spectators here too, on both sides. And I was honestly given pretty free rein to move around. No one seemed too concerned as long as you weren't in the way of the athletes. And I had enough range with my 70 to 200 that I was honestly able to shoot from 360 degrees around this court and really pick my angles and be really smart about it. It was great for learning, and throughout the first day I really stayed on my feet, kept moving, so I could figure out what shots looked like from each angle and prepare for the next day when there would be more serious competition happening. So that being said, here are the spots that I found that really worked well for a lot of my winner shots. There's hits that go down the line like this. There's hits that go cross court like this. There's hits that just get dinked over a defender when they come to block it over here and just go just over top of them. Frequently, there will be net battles, so people will be jumping at the same ball that is set pretty close to the net in order for them to just be able to spike down quickly. So blocks happen frequently at the same time that the contact is actually being made by the hitter. That is a great opportunity for a shot, and if I wanted to get that, I found out pretty quickly that the ideal angle would be shooting with the angle of the net. So if I was trying to cover what they call a monster block, where somebody is just stuffing it at the net essentially, the best angle for me to get both the defender as well as the person hitting it would be shooting alongside the net. That being said, this big tent was where the scorekeepers and staff were, which was alongside that sight line, and I couldn't stand in front because that would be disrespectful to the scorekeepers, the ones volunteers, the people they're helping, as well as the referee here was blocking this sight line pretty well. So my choice was to slide in as close to the scorekeeper's net over here, try my best to shoot along that line. So it wasn't perfectly symmetrical, but it's doing the best with what you're given. So for hits along the line, I tended both for the defender and the hitter. I liked being as close over here as I could. So that way, even if my 200 wasn't enough distance to get a really nice tight shot of somebody at the net, I cropped in using my APS-C mode on the Sony camera and was able to get their faces. There was another spot over here next to the bleachers that I would shoot along for that sight line. Yeah, and generally that was how I'd approach it. That being said, this same spot over here, which I tended to be able to get pretty low down, so I really enjoyed. The advantage of being that low down is that's also the angle I would take if I was trying to get somebody digging. Now, when somebody is a defender in this spot who is receiving, let's say, a serve from in front of where I was, one of the best spots I can actually get for getting a photo of them and their expression is over here and close to where their chairs are. So I wouldn't be in that spot when the play is finished. I would move out of the way, but that's one of the best spots to shoot underneath the net. Now, when it came to more creativity, I really enjoy layers and shooting through things. So there was lots of opportunity for that with these crowds, and the fact that you could stand anywhere behind them. Shooting through the crowd was, of course, a great option that I did take advantage of. There was a banner over here that was a Canada volleyball banner, I believe, and I thought it made for a good background, especially because there was a crowd next to it. So for people's service on this side, of course, I was standing as close to straight alongside that line so I could shoot the moment that they made contact, which ideally would be over that service line. I did get a couple cool shots like that. Again, I can throw them in as I'm doing this. So yeah, that's a full diagram about the shooting positions. Again, when they were resting, I was able to take lots of pictures of them. When they were serving, I was able to figure out the best places to take pictures of them. And honestly, I really did enjoy these spots beside the scoring tent. I found that if I shot right next to where the referee was, obviously I wish he wasn't there, but right next to where they were, it was a pretty good sight line to be able to get people on some of the more defensive plays and to get the really tight expressions or ball compression up at the net, because I didn't even have to crop in. If I was standing close to the scorer's tent, then it was close enough that I could get some pretty great tight shots. One of the most important learnings that I had through this experience was working within the limitations of my gear. I've talked about this lesson before because it's something that I tend to run into at climbing competitions a lot because the environments are quite difficult to shoot. For beach volleyball specifically, one of the limitations I was starting to learn of my camera and my gear was the A7 IV focus settings do not necessarily have the same AI capabilities that some of the newer Sony bodies have integrated, where it will subject track even once they go behind something else, or really just lock on to the subject. And if you're telling it to stay locked on, it will. So when I was first starting to shoot on day one, it was really important for me to experiment with the focus settings and the different focus modes to know what was going to really work. So yeah, the focus mode, I found tracking focus was the best if you had a clear sight line, because it would really stay with the player. So if I was trying to burst as something quick happened, I could track them and make sure that they were going to stay in focus the entire way, even as I'm panning or following them through the action, maybe even zooming. But otherwise, I honestly found myself using simple settings like wide focus modes more often than I'd care to admit. Also, the center focus. Center focus is underrated. The unfortunate truth about using the A7 IV for something like this high-level sports event that's happening with a pace of play that's this quickly, it only actually has a 10 frame per second maximum burst speed. So even if I'm using the high plus setting on the camera and continuous shooting, and I have the CF Express Type 8 cards and I'm shooting at the maximum capacity of this camera, it's still only shooting 10 frames per second. 10 frames per second might still sound like a lot, but when it comes to action that's happening as quickly as somebody spiking a ball, I found a lot of the time what would happen is the continuous burst would catch either side of that action. It was really rare that I would be able to get the actual point of impact, which is what my goal was. The ball really warps when they hit it that hard, so when you do manage to get it, which I did a few times, it's a really beautiful shot. But if I had one of the newer generations of Sony camera for this type of situation, like a Sony A9 III, for example, that shoots 120 frames per second, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're not going to miss the shot and you'll get any points of the action that you want. So that's what I'm looking towards for my next upgrade. Obviously, that's many YouTube videos in the future. So if you like my work, one of the best things you can do is share my content with other people and subscribe and like this video. And leave a comment if you happen to stay this far and write, I don't know, sand. And speaking about sand, when it comes to shooting in a beach sandy environment, one of the coolest things you end up getting is the particles in these shots. So when the event was finished, the athletes were extremely appreciative. They sent me a lot of really nice messages thanking me for the work and saying how much they really liked it. If you're not subscribed yet, you're going to want to subscribe, because the next video is about a sport that I shot that you definitely would not expect. So stick around. See y'all.
I don't need you to tell me how fucking good my coffee is, okay? I'm the one who buys it.